Hi, guys. Welcome back to the .org Thought Corner. Happy to be here and happy to have you. We have Brian Cimbolic, our VP General Counsel, with us today, and we're going to be discussing our anti-abuse appeals process that was just released a few weeks ago. We're going to get deep into it and explore why it's so critical for PIR to have created and released this into the community. So, Brian, how are you today? How's it going?
Good. Thank you very much for having me back, Melina.
Thank you for being here.
Of
So
course.
help us understand what exactly is the new anti-abuse appeals process and why was it important for PIR to create and release it? And then also what are the benefits of it?
Sure. So as you know, we try to be thought leaders when it comes to tackling DNS abuse, not just in .org, but across the domain name system. So we try and set an example across all top-level domains.
Mhm.
And an offshoot of that, about a year ago, we put out, and it's available on the PIR site, our anti-abuse principles. And so it's 7 principles that really are our, our North Star when it comes to dealing with abuse questions. And the second of those is a commitment to due process. And so due process, we currently, when we act on a domain and we suspend it for abuse, things like phishing, malware, botnets, DNS abuse, sometimes a registrant will reach out to us and say, hey, we think you made a mistake. And we try not to make mistakes, of course, but there are instances sometimes where a registrant, for example, if they've lost control of their site, someone's gotten a hold of their password and is taking an otherwise good domain and putting it to a bad purpose, then we will work with the registrant and the registrar to reverse our suspension and get the domain back in the hands of the rightful user.
Okay.
And so we have that sort of informal process set up already. But what we wanted to do, due process doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. If you have the same person or body that made the decision and you're saying, we think you made a mistake, reverse yourself.
Right.
So now a registrant, .org registrants have a new right, a right that didn't exist before and doesn't exist in any other generic top-level domain. If PIR takes action and suspends your domain name, you come to us and you say, hey, we think you made a mistake. If we still say no, now you can go to a neutral third party and go through sort of a quick arbitration and say, did PIR act reasonably? Should I get my domain, the domain I registered, back in my control? And so really there's no downside for .org registrants. All this does is it creates a new right to have your appeal formally heard by a third party.
Okay. And I'm sure that many who did read the information when we released it about the process are wondering why there's a fee involved. Like generally,
Sure.
we're good guys of the internet. So what does the money support or go towards?
Sure, good question. So we are working with Forum, which is formerly the National Arbitration Forum. They are an alternative dispute resolution or ADR. And so that's their fee that they charge for each appeal. So
Okay.
in order to administrate, neutral arbitration services, there's obviously a fee involved with that. And so each appeal is $1,200. Now, PIR, we think, we're doing this because we think it's the right thing to do and want it to be a benefit to registrants. And as a result, we subsidize that. So we pay $700 of that appeal. And the registrant has to pay $500. But if he, or if it's an organization are successful in their appeal, they get that money back. PIR will pay that fee, and then of course get the domain name reinstated. So the fee, it's not something that PIR is benefiting from financially. On the contrary, we're subsidizing more than half of each appeal.
Yeah.
But that's just to cover the costs of that neutral third party that provides the arbitration services.
Understood. Very clear. Okay. And then with the implementation of the anti-abuse appeals process, does this mean that PIR is expanding the scope of the anti-abuse policy? And would that be beneficial to anyone in particular in the community?
So no, long story short, no, we are not, this does not represent any sort of expansion of the DNS of our abuse policy. We already think that we have an industry leading abuse policy. This does not represent any sort of expansion into like website content regulation. Right. Our policy is what our policy is. And this doesn't in any way change what that policy is or what it applies to. All it does is it creates a new right for .org registrants that didn't exist. That if we take action on your domain and you think that we acted in such a way that we didn't really apply the policy, we acted unreasonably, now you have the right to have a neutral third party, not just PIR look at it, but have a neutral third party take a look and see if we acted reasonably in applying that policy.
Okay. And do you have any additional recommendations that could maybe assist the .org community with the understanding of this process further than we have discussed here? Like, do you have any?
Sure. No, it's a good question. So as you might expect, like these rules, they're written by lawyers, you know, the National Arbitration Forum, and so they can admittedly the rules, while they try and make them very, you know, approachable, can still be a little legalistic. And so we did some consultations with a number of you know, .org stakeholders out there. And one of the initial pieces of feedback we got is like, you need to make this really digestible. So if I don't, you know, we don't want a registrant to have to hire a lawyer to take advantage of this process. We want them to be able to understand the process, know exactly what to do and when to do it. So what we did was we took those rules and we boiled them down into 2 companion documents. So and these are both available on the PIR site, but there's an FAQ that really takes the heart of the rules and into, you know, question and answer form, like, okay, what do I do now? When do I need to do it? But then we also have a visual timeline. So you see, to the extent there's clocks that start ticking, you know, like once the appeal is filed, we'll have a certain number of days to respond, and then, you know, things happen, but there's a visualization there. So you know exactly how long it takes, how long you have to take certain actions. Tried to make it as digestible as possible in the end. And both of those resources, the FAQ and the visualization, are on the PIR site.
Okay, sounds great. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about regarding the appeals process and share with our audience today?
No, I think it's a good thing, not just for .org, but for the DNS. You know, that this is something that, especially as other registries and registrars are rightfully getting more aggressive on DNS abuse itself, as that happens, there's necessarily going to end up being probably more suspensions under those actions. So it's important to have a redress mechanism. And so this is, you know, so I touched on that this comes out of our anti-abuse appeals, our anti-abuse principles, but it also is reinforced by recommendations by both the Danish Institute of Human Rights and Article 19, who we recently partnered with. This was a recommendation of theirs to have redress for registrants, but also the Internet and Jurisdiction Policy Network recommends that registries and registrars have a mechanism exactly like this. So we're the first generic TLD to do this. .org is a GTLD, they call them. And so we hope others follow suit. We think it's the right thing to do, and we're really proud to have launched it.
I'm very excited for this, and thank you so much for sharing so many details with us. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the .org Thought Corner.
Thanks so much.
Bye.